Good evening. My name is Christina Peitler, and my favorite subject is social studies. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Many before you have argued with me about just how useless the subject is. I mean, math and English get all the glory, and people are left wondering what's the point in memorizing facts and events and people who are long dead and long over. Well, think about it like this. You know your own personal history, right? You know what country you came from, about your ancestors. I'm sure your family even keeps a special heirloom at home. Even if it's not a complex understanding of your heritage, it's still basic comprehension of your origin story, and you embrace it, because your history helps identify who you are. Now, beyond just our cultural background, we are who we are because of the experiences that we've had. When I was 4 years old, I was walking down a campsite at night with my father. I ran ahead as lanterns twinkled through the darkness beside us. Suddenly, I had a strange urge to touch one. I was completely mesmerized. I felt like a moth drawn to a flame. I reached out my hand as it blurred in the light. Nothing, not even my father's screams in the distance, could keep me from putting my hand on the top. Suddenly, pain sweat up my arm. I clenched my hand as it was red with blisters forming. Now, what did I learn from that experience? Don't touch a lantern, because you are just going to get burned. And I haven't since. Now, I'm sure you've also had experiences where you've learned from your mistakes. But your history isn't exclusive. You don't need to have touched a lantern to know it's going to burn you. I can promise you this. My 3-year-old brother heard me scream my head off in pain all night, and he sure never touched that lantern outside. Look, we all make mistakes. Who here has made a mistake? I certainly have. Now, who here has made the same mistake twice? Some of us, right? Well, what if I told you that there are textbooks outlining every mistake any historical figure has ever made? Imagine that. A fatal error that caused a huge shift in the war. You now have the knowledge to prevent that from ever happening again. I mean, history isn't here to bore us with memorizing facts, but to guide us, to show us what mistakes have been made and how to prevent them from happening again. Because you never know. You may one day be in a position where the course of history depends solely on you. Now, I don't know. I firmly believe anyone in this room is capable of anything. So, if you happen to be in a position where you've conquered almost the entire continent of Europe, if you could take anything from this TED Talk, it's this. Don't invade Russia. Just don't do it. I promise you, it is not going to end well. Now, how do I know this? Simple. Because 2 historical figures in our history have done just that, at the pinnacle of their reign, and because of it, lost everything. Napoleon invaded Russia with an estimated army of 680,000 soldiers, the largest invasion at that point in history. All was going well. They had won a great victory in Moscow, and Napoleon waited for a negotiation from Alexander I that never came. Because the Tsar knew all he had to do was wait. Soon, the Russian winter came, and Napoleon's army froze, starved, and rebelled. Napoleon was forced to leave Russia, humiliated and defeated, with only 27,000 soldiers from his army. Now, no one in history could ever make a mistake like that again, right? Wrong. Adolf Hitler invaded Russia with 3 million soldiers from the Axis powers in what was called Operation Barbarossa. Now, can you guess what happened? Hitler was forced to invade Russia, and not long after, his entire empire crumbled. And I think we can all say that that is a very good thing that he didn't learn from Napoleon's mistake. But what if he had? Oh, and Russia, if you're ever being invaded again, Just wait for the winter. It's been working pretty well so far. It's when we make the same mistakes again and again that it becomes unacceptable. Christopher Columbus came back from the New World, and soon it was a race for new lands and new riches. That race ended in 2 continents completely carved up, and the people who were originally there, oppressed, killed, and their cultures eliminated. Now, this wouldn't be the only time countries, specifically European countries, would take over land for their own economic interests. However, as time went on, they did learn that competing with each other was very insufficient and costly. So in 1885, they came together in what would be known as the Berlin Conference, and amongst themselves carved up African countries, without a single African country representative at the negotiating table. What followed was European powers exploiting African countries and purposefully putting groups with tense relations together so they would fight amongst themselves. Africa is still dealing with the imprint Europe left on them. Now, with 3 continents completely devastated by carving up land for own economic interest, you would think that this stuff wouldn't happen anymore. But it does. After World War I, in the Sykes-Picot Treaty of 1916, the Allies carved up the Middle East. Currently, we are still dealing with those effects. Now, despite a lot of countries being involved in the race for land, it is often the country with the most imperialistic power that is the most involved in foreign affairs. Now, this used to be Britain. They said the sun never set on their empire. But now, that power has been given to America. And it's already obvious that we are making similar mistakes Britain has done. Britain left a long line of countries now trying to rebuild the cultures they lost, and America is gaining that same reputation. After World War II, America made it their responsibility to suppress communism. They fought numerous wars and proxy wars to prevent the red monster from spreading across the world. This left many countries divided. The most visual symbol was that of the Berlin Wall. This divided Germany, one side for the US and one side for the USSR. What followed was North Korea and South Korea also becoming divided at the 37th parallel, and then Vietnam, 17th parallel. As time went on, the US and USSR were able to mend relations and took steps back from Germany. Slowly but successfully, they were able to tear down the Berlin Wall and unify. Currently, North Korea and South Korea are making great strides in mending their own relations. They're starting to disarm their heavily armed border, and North Korea even competed in the 2018 Olympics. Hopefully, they can learn from the successes of Germany. Now, communism had a huge internal conflict for the United States as well. And what would be known as the Red Scare, people were consumed with fear that communists were among them. Infamously called Mccarthyism, panned by Joseph McCarthy, a senator from Wisconsin, in 1953 led a charge to pit brother against brother. You can only compare it to a witch hunt, one as barbaric as those in Salem, Massachusetts. People were afraid, and because of it, they turned on their neighbors. Unfortunately, this is human nature. When something goes wrong, people often try and put their troubles on someone else. This is known as scapegoating. Scapegoating is defined as signaling out a person or a group for unmerited blame or inconsequent negative treatment. America is riddled with this trend. In the early 20th century, people blamed immigrants for the economic struggles. African Americans are subjected to racism, and in the 50s, when they tried to fight back, were targeted. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Executive Order 9066 and sent thousands of Japanese Americans to internment camps. But no place on earth has been left unturned when it comes to scapegoating. Bosnian Muslims were killed by Serbs in the Bosnian genocide. Russians persecuted both Jews and Ukrainians. Catholics in the Roman Empire, Huguenots in France, Somalis in Kenya, Uyghur Muslims, Native Americans, Aboriginals, Stonewall riots, the Rwandan genocide, the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust. Now, I promised myself I wasn't going to get political for this TED Talk. But history has shown us what happens when we blame another group for our troubles. When in reality, we should be focusing all that energy on trying to fix the flaws within ourselves. I beg. No, I plead for you to open a history textbook and learn. Learn about our past mistakes and our successes too. I will never forget. My 10th grade history teacher ended out the year with these words. Don't make the same mistakes my generation did. We will, unless we finally work together and try to prevent them from ever happening again. We have a voice. Our government was set up for us to use them, to be heard, a luxury many don't have. Federalist Papers 51 forthrights the reason we even have government. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. Government is here to quell our flaws. The only way to fix them is through knowledge and insight. Because in the end, we are the ones who will be writing history. And it'll either be plagued with mistakes already made or lessons learned. Because nothing burns more than making the same mistake twice. Thank you.